Recently, I've just skipped doing intros for my videos, and that's kind of the preaching piece style, right? It's like no BS, I get right into it. Right now, I'm back home for the holidays, right? And I thought this would be a good chance to slow things down a little bit and put you guys onto a piece of game that when I was in high school, literally changed the way that I approached building college applications. I used this strategy from like 10th to 12th grade, and it completely elevated the quality of my extracurriculars to something I would have never imagined. And I feel like at this point, as we're kind of approaching that holiday Christmas season, this video is like my gift back to you as we close in on 40,000 subs. We should know this by now. If you don't have the grades, trying to compensate it with other extracurriculars or activities or your SAT score, it's all just kind of coping for the main hole, gaping hole in your application when you apply to some top colleges. Now, I don't necessarily make these videos for the average high school student. I make them for students that either are or are hoping to be the top students aiming for Ivy League colleges to get the best grades and effectively build the best college applications possible. If that sounds like you, then let's have a little one-on-one conversation right now. Your grades should not actually be the #1 focus of your time in high school. That focus should be on an extracurricular, ideally something that makes your application stand out. Having a standout element or spike in your college application, it goes a long way. We know this. But for reasons I can only speculate, no one actually explains how to do this, how to balance building an extracurricular that's literally more demanding than school itself with your academics, with getting good grades, especially if you truly want to take the extracurricular to the moon. Everyone will tell you that you need it. They'll give you ideas for it. No one tells you how to actually implement it. For so many high schoolers, this is the point where they get stuck. It's when school gets really difficult, you know you have to balance things like your grades and your SAT scores and any little extracurriculars you already have ongoing with building this brand new spike, brand new peak activity that's supposed to be the best part of your resume, but you just don't have the time for it. I'm gonna break down exactly how I did it in high school in a way that's actually replicable for a high school student. So when I was in high school, my #1 extracurricular activity was science fairs. I used to compete in like the whole science fair system, all the way down from like the local science fairs to the national ISEF. I'd go for all of those big awards. Now the way science fair would work is that a lot of like the heavy research would be done in like the fall time, and then I'd go off to compete in like winter and spring at all these different fairs. So essentially year round during the school year, I was swamped with work. Regardless of what your spike is, what activity it is, you're probably in a very similar boat to where I was, where it just feels like you're so kind of tired all the time. It's like getting that energy to go and work on your extracurricular after grinding for school is such a pain to do it consistently. If you're able to do it, cool, you're able to go all the way to the end. But how? How is the question? A couple minutes ago, I said I make these videos for high achieving students, right? Let's define what that actually means in practice. If you're kind of like what I was in high school, getting a good GPA, like 4.0 or near 4.0, it comes relatively easy. Now, it's a ton of work. I'm not going to deny that. It's a huge time drain. But once you have an efficient studying and homework routine and you kind of get into that flow state, you're able to get the work done. You do the studying that needs to happen in order to get the grades. If you're in that boat, what you need to understand is that at some point, your extracurricular should become a priority for you over your schoolwork. Putting off doing something like your homework or studying to spend time on your extracurricular to really get it going is absolutely a valid use of your time. Think about it this way. Let's say you need a 90% to get an A in your high school. If you take a particular class and you're studying for 10 hours a week, you'll end the semester with a 99%, given that you're doing all of this work consistently and you're going for that high grade. But if you were to put that class on the back burner and spend a little bit more time focusing on, say, your nonprofit, the end result at the end of the semester will look a little bit different. You'll spend, say, 6 hours a week on classwork and finish the semester with a 93%. But now your nonprofit is so much more developed, has gone so much further than you ever could have imagined. Here's the catch. The student who ended the class with a 99% and the student who ended with a 93% both get an A. They both end up with a 4.0. The bottom line is this: you have a very limited amount of time in high school and a lot of big goals to accomplish. If you want to actually make it, you need to develop an effective strategy to get the best grades possible in the most efficient way possible. That's the only way you're gonna have enough time and energy to set aside to building up some kind of a spike in your college application. Now, if you go to a high school that uses number grades instead of letter grades or some other kind of system, sure, it might make it a little bit more difficult, but the point still stands. You need to start thinking in that optimized way if you want the time to pursue the things that actually matter. Now, before we get any further, I want to address this counter argument. We need to talk about the actual knowledge, the content knowledge that you're gaining from high school. Because if you're going to do what you can to try to optimize like your grades without spending a ton of time, that comes at a little bit of a cost, right? It comes at the cost of maybe not gaining as much material knowledge from a particular class that you could if you put in that high level of commitment. I'm going to tell you right now, the factual knowledge that you gain from high school, especially for subjects that you are not interested in or are not planning on pursuing once you go to college, are not that important. They're really not. If you want to learn about something specific and niche, like the Cold War for instance, you can literally go onto YouTube and find hundreds of hours of documentaries to watch. If you just spend one day watching a documentary while you eat dinner instead of playing Clash Royale in your crusty gaming chair, you will learn everything that you want to know about that topic. If you want to become a doctor, learning the material in your biology or chemistry class is completely valid. It's absolutely going to help you in the future, and it's probably something that you're interested in, so you can commit more time to that class. But you don't have to put that level of high effort into every single class that you're taking because it's simply not productive. Just because the school system is forcing you to take a class does not suddenly make that class and that knowledge that you gain any more relevant than other knowledge that you gain in your life outside of school. I took IB history when I was in high school, and I have this massive wealth of knowledge about the Chinese Revolution of 1949. The last time that knowledge was actually useful to me was when I took my history final in 11th grade. I have never used it since. This might not be the most brand-friendly answer, but I want to give you guys the honest truth when I preach on this channel. If you come from a background like mine where things aren't just handed to you, you don't just get to buy your way into internships or an admission seat at Stanford and you have to work for it, sometimes you have to cut little corners like this. And I don't think it's undermining your education system or debilitating your ability to actually go to college and flourish as a student. You can learn all of those great study techniques and become productive and gain all those useful skills. You just do it in a way that actually aligns with what you want to do. You're not wasting your time on things that genuinely don't matter. So let's start getting into some of the practicals here, right? What are things that we can do to kind of prioritize an extracurricular over some of our schoolwork? How can we balance that? Well, first things first, doing that prioritization is a way of thinking. If you come home from school and you have a ton of energy, you can start by working on your extracurricular while you're still fresh, while your ideas are going. And then when you get a little bit more tired and you feel more drained, you can switch over to doing your schoolwork that might be a little bit more mind-numbing, right? If your math teacher just gave you a bunch of math problems to do for homework, you can do that when you're still feeling a little tired by pushing yourself. But you're not going to be able to have the motivation to work on a brand new extracurricular that maybe you could just put off the work until tomorrow. When you're constantly prioritizing the extracurricular, it puts you into a situation where you're basically just forced to continue to grind a little bit extra to get your homework and everything done on time. All of your school assignments are on like a deadline, right? It's like your teachers are hand holding you through this. Okay, you have to get your homework done by this date, you have an exam on this date. For your extracurriculars, it's all self-driven. So by flipping the script a little bit and just doing that work when you're fresh and then grinding the schoolwork later when you're a little bit more tired, that forces you to get everything done and to be even more productive than if you were to do things the other way around. Now, when it comes to a lot of extracurriculars, there are going to be certain times when things are very busy and times when things are a little bit lighter. So for me, when I used to compete in science fairs, during the actual competition season, right, the couple weeks leading up to the competition and then when the competitions would occur, I was the busiest. And I knew that every year, sometime between January to February and then again in April, I would be super busy. What you want to do is plan ahead for these times, right? Spend a little bit of extra time studying a little earlier in the school year while you have the time, get your grades up so that way if they dip a little bit during those difficult seasons, it's not going to impact your GPA like that. The other thing you absolutely should be doing is asking your teachers for help. Do not hesitate in doing this. When you have those periods of time when you're getting really, really busy, ask for extensions on homework, on projects, on literally anything that you can to kind of push those things down so that you can get your extracurriculars done and then you can get on to doing your homework and getting them done at the extensions or the convenience that your teacher is giving you. When you go and ask your teachers for these extensions, ask them before the deadline and ideally like significantly before the deadline. If you go like a week and a half or 2 weeks before an assignment is due, you go to a teacher and you say, look, this is the situation. And you can be pretty honest with this, right? You'd be like, I'm working on this nonprofit or I have this competition coming up. I'm going to be super, super busy. Is it okay with you if I were to take an extra, 3 days or 4 days to work on this assignment right after my competition and turn it in. I really value your class. I just need a little bit of extra time to make sure I can put my best foot forward with my work. If you come to them with like a little spiel like that and you do it in a timely manner, 99% of the time, they're just gonna give it to you. Like, it's high school. Teachers are nice. If you're friendly with them, they will help you. You also want to supplement this by trying to show like some level of high effort in their class, right? Through a little bit of participation and stuff. That way they know you're a good student, you have good intentions, and they're willing to support you. Once you're able to get a little bit of extra like leverage in that sense, a little bit of mobility in your schoolwork and when things need to get done, it opens up your schedule so much to have the flexibility to work on your extracurriculars. Now, when you work on your activities at home, it's pretty logical, right? You come home from school, you have energy, you grind on your extracurriculars, and then once those are all done, then you spend some time, you know, working on your schoolwork, working on any other kind of like volunteering or activities you have, maybe going to the gym for a little bit. That all checks out. But what about when you're in school? Because that's a huge part of your day as well, right? You get up at like 7 a.m., school starts at 8 a.m., you're in there for, you know, 6, 7, 8 hours. What should you be doing then? Should you be working on extracurriculars during class, for instance? Well, the answer to that kind of depends. If you have like some paperwork you need to get done, or you're trying to build like your website for your nonprofit, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, except you just need to ask yourself, are you actually being productive? If there's some homework you need to get done anyways, either for that class or for another class, you might as well just do it during school anyways. That way you can just get it out the way, and then when you go home, you can work on your extracurricular. Or if you feel like the ideas just aren't flowing, like in that school environment, sometimes it can be really hard to actually generate like good quality content for a business, then maybe spend that time doing something else that's even as simple as just paying attention to the lecture and like taking some notes. That's better than just sitting around and pretending like you're building your website and you're adding in details, but in reality, you know everything you're writing down is just like pretty much garbage. Like, you're not actually gonna use it. Even if it feels like, you know, you're not playing video games here, you're still being productive. From the eyes of your teacher, if you clearly look distracted, they don't know that you're being productive, right? It just feels disrespectful, and the worst thing that you can really do in high school is kind of get into like the bad lens of your teacher, where it feels like you don't care about their class. But I've also been in high school. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I haven't done these things, and those aren't the reason that I'm even here today. So I'm gonna put you onto a little bit of game, alright? This is a strategy that all of my Ivy League homies used in high school. What you wanna do is, as soon as you enter class, right? Everyone gets settled down, you take your seats, the teacher is gonna start doing their lecturing. Pay semi-attention to what they're saying for literally about 5 minutes. At some point, they're gonna do like a check-in to see if like the class is engaged, right? They're gonna ask some kind of a question. Maybe if it's like a math class, they'll ask you to solve the warm-up on the whiteboard. Just raise your hand instantly, go up and do it. Once that's done, you can pretty much do whatever you want for the rest of class, because your responsibility as like a good student who's like actively learning is fulfilled. You can raise your hand again like in the middle of class to kind of give your opinion on something or to ask a question, and I think that's totally valid, but as just a general baseline, try to participate at least once per class in all of your classes, and at that point, like, you're engaged and familiar enough with the teacher to where they'll pretty much just leave you alone. Like, you can do whatever you want during class. My next point here is a very functional one. It relates to recommendation letters. If you haven't already seen my recommendation letter guide, you have to go watch that. That's like completely life-changing when you're in high school. But think about it this way. If you're doing the bare minimum for every class from an academic point of view just to get your A, it's not really a good look. Teachers can tell. But with that being said, you don't need every single teacher to just love and adore you. And the way that the world works is, even if you did try to do that, not all of them are going to like kind of naturally connect with you. So instead, what you want to do is to pick out 2 teachers that you genuinely like and care about, that you enjoy their class and you feel like they kind of connect with you on that more personal level. Pick out around 2 teachers like that every single year in high school, from freshman year all the way through senior year, and put a bit more effort into the work that you do in their classes. In general, this will just set the stage for you to eventually get good recommendation letters, and once you kind of get it solidified in your head when you're like a junior and you know who you're gonna get the rec letters from, then you can really ramp up the kind of effort that you put into their class and build up that relationship to a level where you're gonna get a stellar rec letter. In your brain, you really only have the mental capacity to focus on one main objective in your life at a time. You can have like one primary objective and one secondary objective, and everything else just kind of happens as part of your routine. My point with this whole video is that you need to make your extracurricular take that #1 position over school and use your general God-gifted academic abilities and work ethic and persistence to get that 4.0 while you also build your extracurricular into something that's going to propel your application to that Ivy League level. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about in this video, or you want me to discuss any of these points in more detail, let me know in the comment section and I got you. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Pratik. Have a fantastic rest of the year. Peace.